It's Beatty. We gotta start writing show notes before I do anything. But anyway, today we're gonna be talking about a few things that I found interesting that are probably important to know if you're going after girth or length gains. So just stick with me. Before I get into it, though, in the description below, you'll find BD's Big Book of Length. Essentially, it is my take on semi-therapeutic penis enlargement. I did research for about 10 months at this point on what's best for length based off of what physiotherapy research states, making penis enlargement safer, more effective, and take less time. So if you're struggling to follow along on the Reddit or r slash, I guess that is our subreddit r slash getting bigger, and on my YouTube here, it's probably up your alley. Perv drop this into our Telegram channel for All Things MailPod. They'll be out again soon-ish for those that actually follow that. Anyway, basically this study goes into detail about how they were able to measure the changes in a penis during an erection and figure out what the differences is between a grower versus shower. So, first thing to point out, 225 patients. Then, prostaglandins were injected into the penis to do a medically induced erection. I have butchered that 20 times, and that's why I've had to take so many takes. Anyway, proglastilins are what cause endothelial tissues to dilate. If you can causes max dilation to the penis, you get max erection. So there is no erection quality fluctuations during this, making this a very good indicator for max size. And since I did 225 patients, you can actually get a pretty good bell curve in that population because it's usually about 20 specimens in a study that allows you to do a bell curve showing natural distribution. Anyway, a few key takeaways before we actually talk about the differences is the mean flaccid size was 10 centimeters right here. I think that's under my head. Yes. So 10 centimeters, which is like less than 4 inches off the top of my head. So not crazy big. The mean stretch flaccid size was 5.32 centimeters, which is a little bit over 6 inches, but the mean erect penile length was 14.37, and that is, divided by 2.55, 5.6 medically induced erections for the erect average penis length. And this is basically what I've been saying for 3 damn years at this point, is that the average penis size is 5.5 to 6 inches, closer to 5.5. And it's like hard to refute this if you ask me, just because it's medically induced erections, no erection quality. If there is any sufferers of ED, they would not have been really counted for in this study. Anyway, on to the important stuff about PE. So they are saying the ratio between erect and flaccid size determines on how thick the tunica is. So if you have a thinner tunica, it can bunch up more when not aroused, meaning that it takes up less space. So to the actual meat and potatoes, and what I want to demonstrate to you guys is that a grower is going to have a much smaller flaccid, as conventionally said, while a shower is going to have a longer flaccid compared to their erect length. Not saying it's going to be longer, but it's going to be closer to their erect length. What that means is that since the tunica is thicker for the longer showers, it is going to not be able to bunch up as much. Therefore, there's going to be more exposed length while at rest. Meanwhile, growers, since they are thinner tunicas, they can stretch more when erect, and then they also condense more when flaccid. So if you are a major grower, you can gain very quickly from penis enlargement, it would seem, or at least do much less work than actual showers. Now, the numbers they use, I kind of disagree with, just like on what the names for growers and showers would be, but it's semantics, right? So they're saying individuals that penis length is their... So for showers, they're saying their erect length is only 30% longer than their flaccid length. So if the individual is 9 inches long, just to make the math easy, they're going to be about 6 inches long flaccid. And then for a grower, if they are like 50, so if they're about half the size they are when they are flaccid. So if they are 3 inches long, flaccid, they'll be about 6 inches long while erect. Now, I think that number should be a little bit lower, but it doesn't really matter as this is what they figured out, like, on average. But anyway, what that means for penis enlargement, and I kind of already touched on this, is that if the tunica is thinner, it can stretch easier. Therefore, the easier you can stretch it, the less work you can do, potentially stretching longer. Now, that doesn't mean growers can't grow. I technically was a grower since the start. I was about 4 inches flaccid, and I was about 6 inches bone pressed erect length. And I put on over 2 inches in length. So you can definitely still grow. It's just like figuring out how much work you need, and that's what Perp was really talking about. But there are a few other things that can change flaccid size, mainly pelvic floor dysfunction and blood flow. So if it's a cold day and there's not much blood going to your penis, it's not going to be exceptionally large. If you have pelvic floor issues, not letting a lot of blood into your penis while at rest, it's going to be not exceptionally large. So you gotta just keep those in mind when we're considering this. A few other things I would consider for tunica thickness is like the actual feel when hard. So a thin tunica is going to be a little bit easier to push in. Think of like a balloon, even though it's taking up as much space as, say, a basketball, it's easier to push in because there's less rubber making a strong wall. Therefore, it needs less PSI too. Meanwhile, the basketball, thick, dense, hard to push in and less flat. Same idea, I would assume. So the denser the harder your erections are, the harder they are to bend in particular, would probably show how thick your tunica is. Another thing is that a lot of guys report getting a longer flaccid as they do PE. Now, there's a few reasons. One, more vasodilation. So they get more blood to the area, therefore they're just showing more. But another thing is, I can probably switch to normal face. Another thing is that they are actually just thickening their tunicas, right? Because part of the stress adaptation is thickness of the collagen fibrils. So your tendons will get thicker if you put them under load too often. An adequate amount to keep up the strength. That's part of the strength adaptation. They get thicker. The same thing is going to happen to your penis. Unfortunately, a lot of you guys probably want a longer flaccid, but at the same coin, it means it'll be technically harder to work the tissues as well. So you just got to keep that in mind. My flaccid went up 2 inches. My erect length went up 2 inches at least. So it's not... for me, it's been like almost 1-to-1. Some guys is going to be much more. In my first couple years, it was much more flaccid gains than it was erect gains. But that could have been just because of training styles. All right, I think I beat that point to death. Let's move on to girth gains being exponential. All right, now, on to why girth gains are probably harder than length gains in a vacuum. And it's just simple math that I've messed up 5 times explaining. So, I made a chart based off of the volume of the cylinder, which is pi r squared times height. So r is radius, so in our context that is half the width that you see while looking down. Height would be the length of your penis. So the average girth is about 4.5 to 4.6, so right here. And I'm calling this units of volume, so we are about 8.1 units on average as a species. Now, let's just walk through this. Let's say you started below average, 3.8 inches. That would be about 6 units of volume. You get up to average, you've increased 2.1 units of volume. Now, the jump from 4.4 to 5.0 is about 2.9 units of volume. So we're almost increasing work by 50% needed to fill in that much volume, or at least tissue. Work, it might be different because, there's more cells you can divide. But on paper, you're going to need even more tissue to make the same changes in width. Now, the next jump, 5.65, 14. So we're looking at another 3 units of work, of volume on the increase. Then from 5.65, we're looking at 18 units of volume from 5.65, so 4 units of volume. And then for whoever wants to have a 5.5 inch by 7 inches thick penis, that'd be 20 units. Just double checking, yeah. Over 20 units. So we're looking at 5 to 6 extra units of volume. So there is a clear change in amount of work needed per level of girth. The thicker you are, the more work it takes to get thicker, just because you have so much more space to fill in as the area continues to increase exponentially. Now, this is even more apparent with bigger sizes. So this is 7 inches long. As you can see, the change of the slope of the graph increases relatively quickly. So a 5-inch penis, a 5-inch thick penis is about 11 units of volume. If it was 7 inches long, it would be 14 units. So it's 3 more units of work. And that's actually an interesting thing, right? So let me just double check my math. It is only a little bit more work to increase your girth, to increase your length 1.5 inches than it is to increase it 0.5 inch. Okay, so it is literally 3 times more effective or easier to train length, mathematically speaking, than it is to train girth. Just based off of this, because we are saying this is about 11 units. This is 14 units, so we're just looking at length here. But if we look at the difference between 4.4 to 5.0, that is 2 units. Right? Yes. And as you get longer, technically you need even more tissue to fill in your newfound volume, because your volume is just going to increase faster because you have more vertical space to fill in too. So it's complicated, but the real gist is the thicker you get, the harder or more work is required to increase. So like 1/4 inch goes a long way no matter what size you are. And then finally, the jump from 7 inches to 8 inches is dramatic, but not as dramatic from obviously 5.5 to 7. But as you can see, girth just keeps getting higher and higher. The volume required gets higher and higher to fill said cylinder. So, for all of you guys saying that girth gains are slow, you are right. But you got to remember that it's not that girth is not gaining. It is just that you have to worry about all the dimensions when you're doing girth training. While length, you only have to worry about the H value. Here, you need to worry about literally squared the R value, your radius. So it is just going to have to expand both ways instead of that way. You know what I mean? So no matter what, it's just going to take more work, is really what I'm getting at. So don't get discouraged. And on the same note, that the difference for, I'm just speaking from experience, going from 5.5 to 6 inches took me so much longer than going from about 5 inches to 5.5. It took me like about a year to go from 5 to 5.5, and then it took me like 3 to 4 years to get to 5.5 to 6. Granted, my training was all over the place at the time, but still. And from actual use, 6 inches yielded a stronger reaction than 5.5. Like, it was a night and day difference. Not saying that 5.5 is not thick, but a lot of condoms actually won't fit 5.5. You need to get the XL size here in the States of your 5.5 mid shaft. But what I'm really trying to say is that the work counts if you do it, okay? And it's just such like these small changes really add up, especially at these higher sizes, because again, the volume is changing so much at these higher sizes. So just keep that in mind, okay? 8x6 is fucking gigantic in the vast majority of cases. Let's see, on a graph. 6.25, just to make it easy, is about 25 units. Going down to the average size is 8 units. So we're talking about a 3 times difference from the average just in volume. Okay. So just like thinking about it logically, you are literally 3 times bigger when you're 8x6 compared to 5.5. And I'm not like size shaming. I'm just trying to say what that's like. So it's hard to like fathom how much mass that really is, because it's like it's a penis, right? But that would be like, to me, it would be like the difference between being like 160, 5'10", 160 for muscle mass compared to someone of your same height that but 240 pounds of muscle. It's just like a night and day difference, right? Like, it is hard to put them in the same class. But yeah, that's really what I wanted to get to, is that girth gains are exponential. It's going to take a long ass time to jump 2 inches compared to 2 inches in length. But yeah, like, don't fret, okay, if it's taking a long time, because it should take a long time. But that's really what I wanted to talk about, and these videos probably went way longer than I really wanted to, but here we are. If you like my content, like and subscribe. I really need to get in the habit of saying that. Again, books in the description, Peak Male Physique for penis enlargement equipment, LeviathanSups.com for very high value supplementation, and Vigor is on Amazon. This is BD signing off.